Okay, guys, welcome back. Again, we have Mr. Johansson, Ms. Riley with us, and this time we're not talking time management or task management, we're talking study skills. And study skills, again, just remind us, you work with primarily
Freshmen.
all right, and you work with primarily
Juniors and seniors.
good. Okay, so why do we have kind of a variety of people here? Because there's a variety of skills that you're going to use. Now, arguably, would some study skills be the same from freshman all the way to senior?
I would say yes.
Give me something super basic that you're like, if a fresh or a senior comes in and they're not doing this, you're like, where you been? What are you thinking?
I would say study on their own time instead of only in class.
Oh, that's so unfair. But I have basketball, and I have to go to work, and I have to watch my sister. That's not fair that you're making me stay outside of class. Is that a reasonable expectation for kids today?
Yes. And I would kind of echo that, like, study skill, if you can't do basic recall of stuff that we did in class, that we directly went over, potentially even like took notes over. If we're taking notes over it, probably something that's important. If we can't do, if a senior came in and they couldn't do the basic recall of what we've gone over, I would say that we're in bad shape right now.
Okay, so number one, expect that there's going to be some time out of class. That's number one. Number two, you have to be, I think the word that I would use to describe what you were describing was, you have to be present enough in class. So not just that I was here, like I was physically taking the oxygen, converting it to carbon dioxide. I was actually engaged enough that if you ask me what happened, say, yesterday in class, I might have a clue. What are some good ways that if I'm in class, that I can be engaging myself in whatever's going on in class, that will help me be a participant, that will help me be present? Now, you mentioned take notes.
I try to do in my freshman class, I tell them what they need to write down. These are things that they need to write down. If it's not something I would directly say, this is just for me, for my notes, just to kind of keep us guided, but I would tell them specifically, here's specific things I want you to write down.
So at the freshman level, you're literally telling me probably multiple times in a class period, let's be honest. I've been in a few classrooms, he's gonna say it multiple times in the day. Write this down,
Correct.
Write this down. Now, why do we have to do that as teachers? Because we have kids that don't write it down.
Correct.
Okay, so you're telling them, do you always tell your seniors or your upper level kids, it's time to write this down?
No.
Okay.
And I always give them an option.
Ooh.
They can take notes, but they don't have to. But I always strongly advise that they do. Some do and some don't.
Okay, so let's be honest, this is a trick question. Ladies and gentlemen, we're giving you a cheat code to Ms. Riley's class. It's when she says, totally write it down or don't. This is not the option. You write it down. Okay, now, but you're also not going to lay it out like Mr. Johansson.
Correct.
Why is that?
Because at that point, they need to know what's important and what's not. And I'm hoping by the senior level, they can pick apart what's super important and what's not.
Right, and it's not that Mr. Johansson just loves telling you to write it down. It's just you don't expect kids to know the difference between important and not important enough to write down yet. That's
We're working to that.
That's it. These are skills, guys. And I think let's talk about the word skill. I'm not gifted to do it. It's not something I'm born with. It's a skill. It's like shooting a free throw. It's like running a long distance run. It's like handling anything on a court or painting something. There are maybe natural gifts, but we got to put that work in on it. We actually have to train ourselves to utilize that skill. So as Mr. Johansson's saying, now is a good time. By the time you get to Miss Riley, you should know what time is a good time to write stuff down. Now, why write stuff down at all? I mean, I got computers, I can look everything up. Why would note-taking matter?
I think there's something to, if I'm a student, if I'm verbally hearing it, and then I'm actively writing it, and then I read it again, I'm much more likely to remember it. And, it's not, you got to remember every tiny little detail, but if you were to do that, I think that, the likelihood that you'll recall that information is much better. And I think you brought it up. I think at the freshman level, I try to teach the kids, this is how I would also take notes. If you write everything down, there's no way you'll remember all of that.
Well, because if you're writing literally everything I say down, you're not focusing on the parts that are important. You're focused on the writing, and the hearing has tuned out. And whatever I've written, I'm not really focusing on. I'm focusing on this one skill, not the content. Notes are not meant to be the activity.
Correct.
Notes are meant to be an assistant to the activity.
Correct.
Okay, so, and in fact, there's actually quite a bit of research on this. Mr. Johansson mentioned this, that not only have you heard it and or seen it, if it's on a PowerPoint or something like that, these are a couple senses. Now, I have had to connect different parts of my brain with that knowledge to actually physically make the hand do what it's supposed to do. And then you mentioned the third thing, which is the thing that we mentioned a little bit in our last session, but that I think is the part that most kids don't do.
Correct.
They don't reflect.
Yep.
And I think the read and reflect portion of note-taking is highly underrated.
Agreed.
What do you think is going to be the most important part about having those notes?
Going back over them.
Yeah.
I mean, and for me, if they decided to take notes, most of the time they can use them for other things as we go.
Now, again, ladies and gentlemen, we are already on super secret Miss Riley class tips. The reason she's having you write it down is because she's probably going to let you use it at some point. She does that on purpose. Okay? Arguably, you may not let kids use them on your tests in your class, but again, if we've connected here to reflecting on those things, now we should be able to, when you come in the class the next day, do exactly what we talked about. I've been present. What's another skill besides note-taking of simply being present in a classroom?
I think asking questions, whether they're clarifying questions or taking it to the next level, but you're sparking your interest, you're sparking your engagement, that you're probably paying attention that, I can ask a question to further what you said or for clarification. I think the students that ask questions, not what did you just say, but an actual question that's with it, will retain that information better than the ones that I just heard it and that was it, and maybe even took notes, but now again I'm engaging. So that other sense of, no, I'm talking through this part and then I'm engaging myself.
And as a freshman, maybe those questions are more, what was that again? Or does that mean this or that? That kind of basic connection stuff. But by the time we get to your class, especially in not that social science doesn't have large themes, but when we get to English, we're talking all large themes, not necessarily dates, times, and casualty numbers. This actually, questions become important. What kind of questions would you like to hear? What questions tell you that student is really paying attention?
I would say it actually goes from questions to comments.
Okay.
Because questions, even that I get at the senior level, are clarifying questions. But the comments of, I remember we talked about this with this book earlier this year, or last year in so-and-so's class we did this. Like the connections and the comments from them are what is going to keep them engaged.
So questions at the freshman level that may be clarifying or fact-based start moving into connections where they're taking this thing and going, these fit together like this. Now, ideally, I teach freshmen too. It would be nice from time to time in the freshman classes if somebody would be like, is that like what we talked about last week? Yes. But at the junior senior level, all of us have taught at that level too, that's an expectation. That's an expectation. And part of that is being engaged enough to make those connections. Because I can't just be off over here looking this way and not really paying attention to what's going on, then all of a sudden come back with just, wisdom gold. It doesn't work like that.